The following program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.
Welcome to Gate City Chronicles. I'm Kevin Avard, your host. And today we have an actor, film producer, Scott Severance.
Yes, sir.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
Well, you're native here to New Hampshire?
Yes, I was born in Manchester, moved to Pittsfield, New Hampshire when I was around 10, went to Pittsfield High School, went to UNH Durham, have lived in maybe 10 different communities in the state. I get kicked out after a certain amount of time. Have lived in Exeter, Portsmouth, Manchester, Londonderry, Derry, Nashua. I currently live up in Lincoln.
Are you like a traveling road show? Is that what you are?
I am. As I say, I overstay my welcome after a while, and I get booted out. And so now I'm testing the North Country because they don't know about me up there.
Oh, well, wonderful. Well, at least you've left your mark.
Yeah, or something.
So, we were off camera. We were talking about some of the theaters and some of our connections that we've known. And a good friend of mine, Clint Close, who put on a lot of Broadway plays up in the Concord area, such as The Gift and a number of other shows. But you seem to know Clint.
I do know Clint. I know more of him than I know him. But it's a small state, and there are relative few of us that have actually made a living, and I use the quote fingers liberally, doing what we do because we love what we do. And Clint and I have never worked on a project together, except we judged a music festival at the Concord Community Music Center last year. And we knew each other, we chatted and said hi, but
have you seen some of the productions he's put on in just an elementary school?
No.
Beaver Meadow Elementary School has an amazing sound system that they put together, and I believe they generated the revenues through the Broadway plays that they put on. It's just an amazing amount of work that they've done, and getting the kids involved with theater is a great thing.
That's actually where I suppose in my New Hampshire career, it all began. I had been working as a professional equity actor here and there and getting gigs when I could get them. And in my late 30s, I got involved with the American Stage Festival when it used to be in Milford and in Nashua. American Stage Festival was a fairly reputable regional theater company. And I became their director of education, running their kids programming. And I don't think it was my fault, but a few years after I got involved, ASF went belly up, as many theaters do. Couldn't survive the financial crunch, whatever most recent recession was happening. Audiences were dwindling. It's too expensive to put on stuff. And I think they were having problems with the building in Milford, which has since been renovated. The Y is in there now, I think, and they do work in the old barn now. But I became the artistic director of the Peacock Players, which was the children's theater wing of the American Stage Festival. And
the one in here in Nashua?
Yeah, and when it became obvious that ASF couldn't go on anymore, there was a very quick hue and cry to save the kids programming, which was really the only piece of the pie that was generating any revenue stream. As you said, getting the kids involved gets their parents involved, and because it's about education as much as it is entertainment, there's grantable dollars available. And
I think they just put something on recently. I'm just a bill from Capitol Hill.
Peacock is still there,
Yeah.
still in the same building where American Stage Festival was, and still doing.
By the library.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. The 14 Court Street. I think it's the Janice Streeter Auditorium is what they've since named the theater. But on 14 Court Street, they're still there, still winning awards like we did when I was there. It's a high-end organization, and I was lucky enough to fall into a position where there was no supporting professional theater anymore. But Peacock wanted to become its own 501c3, its own nonprofit organization. Right. They hastily formed a board, and Scott, you have to run with this. And so, okay, it's a gig, it's in the theater. And I always have had an affinity towards kids and teaching anyway. So I spent 6 uproarious years with some of the most talented, wonderful kids and their parents.
What kind of education does that bring to the table, though? The whole idea of theater. I mean, it really encompasses a whole bunch of things. You have to learn scripts. You have to learn how to come out of your shell.
Well, the whole music is mathematical.
Right.
Is all you could argue that it's all about counting, and it's all about having a rhythm. I would very firmly fall on the side of theater and arts in general are just as important as reading, writing, and arithmetic.
I so agree with that.
Because it's teaching kids to not be in a box where all the standardized education is learn this much and A, B, C, D equals D, E, whatever letter I stopped on. Theater, art, music, sculpture, painting do not have limits.
We just went to my wife and I. We went to go see Kevin, my stepson. He's in the National North Band. Mm-hmm. Now I know it's not theater, but it's music. It's
Same
art.
Same thing. It's art.
And I was just listening to what they produced. It was just amazing. And then of course they had their jazz ensemble after which. And you can't describe to some people who are not musicians. But when a kid gets up there and he improvises with a saxophone, or she improvises with a scat, or they're so thinking outside the box, mm-hmm. and yet within limits of, say, the circle of fifths. You know, that's huge.
Well, it's the whole getting up in front of people, which we're all going to have to do eventually.
Sure.
I would tell the kids that at some point in whatever line of work you choose, you're going to have to talk to people. Lawyers are actors. Teachers are actors.
Politicians
are actors. You have to play a role at a certain time and develop an ability to think on your feet and be clever and charming and witty. And theater it's like being involved in sports without the full contact, unless you're doing a major dance musical, in which case there are just as many injuries per capita mm-hmm. as on the football field. But it requires a certain mental participation that some of the other things that we commonly associate with education. I can sit down and study for a test. I can learn my lines for a play, but until I get in there next to that other person who's saying their lines and the audience and the music and the lights and my costume and the prop is in the wrong place, you have to be so alert, and it's a mental training.
And you're focusing big time. Yeah. I just watched the series, John Adams.
Mm-hmm. Love it.
Oh, I got choked up after the first one. And now, I was in 1776 up with the sandcastles, and all I could think of while I'm thinking, not all, but one of the things that I kept thinking of when I was watching the series is, sit down, John.
Yeah.
Sit down, John. Yeah. Come on, John, sit down. And it's like, oh man, the guy just kept talking, and he was so, that's what they meant.
Yeah.
But it all brought together.
It was the original filibuster, wasn't it? The very first one, where he was about to pass out, but he wasn't going to let go of it. And
but that again, it can be so educational, and the stage, you're trying to keep historically correct, and you're learning your lines, and you're learning how to interact with other people. You experience ups and downs with the theater. And
a lot of stuff that I actually know in my mind historically or pop culture wise is because I did this show or that show. And, you know, any of my knowledge of medieval England is because I was involved with productions of Camelot and Spamalot at one point. And frequently, this is the best example, is many years and many pounds ago, I played Mozart in Amadeus at the Palace in Manchester.
Oh, nice.
And it was actually the first show that I did where I took myself seriously as an actor. I'm a clown, and I never really considered myself an actor. I was a performer, and I could make you laugh. But I got involved with Mozart, and I studied, and I immersed myself, and I read stuff.
Did you play Mozart?
Yeah, I played Mozart,
Wow.
and I listened to music, and in the privacy of my own home, I was completely into immersing myself in the character in a way that I'd never done before. I'd just show up and go, ready, you know. But I know a whole bunch about Mozart now from having done that show. You know, I'm going to be doing Don Quixote this summer in a production of Man of La Mancha.
We were just talking about that off
which,
camera.
I've done the role before, but I'm going to go dig out my dusty old Cervantes novel and read it again, because that's part of the preparation for it.
I would love to see somebody put on a show across the universe. Did you see that movie, Across the Universe, of the Beatles?
The Beatles thing?
Yeah.
There's a Beatles tribute on Broadway now, which may be Across the Universe.
Well, the way they put that movie together was absolutely phenomenal. And it was so original in how it used, it just took you through the times and told you a story. But if you grew up through that time, I was in a stage, I was in the background listening to kids, 18, 21, laughing at things that I'm thinking, why are you laughing at that? That's not funny. And then I started laughing at things, and they weren't laughing. And it was such a gap.
Completely different perspective.
They had
right,
no clue. And it was just quite the learning experience in that you don't really see what we're all seeing at the same time, but how generations change and interpret different things.
Well, part of the whole essence of theater is about storytelling. It's from the most ancient of traditions, where news was passed from one village to the next by someone who ran on foot and told the tales of what happened elsewhere, and it's how myths and fairy tales and all that stuff began.
Oh, and by the way, there was a dragon.
Yeah, I'm just going to put that in because that makes the story more interesting.
Oh, the scratch.
And so
that's
they
nothing.
become, obviously get embellished and become these fantastical tales, but they're frequently the same story from one culture to the next, to the next, to the next, and that's where we get our fairy tales.
Right.
Same thing with theater. Boy meets girl, boy loses girl, boy gets girl is the most classic one, but it's all about telling the stories and reliving, learning the lessons, the moral of the story, the whole Aesop's fable thing, where there's a story and here's the lesson you've learned because you listened to this story.
Right.
It's the same thing in any piece of theater. At the end of Man of La Mancha, for example, if you're not on your feet weeping, you haven't got a soul, because that show is extremely emotional at the end. There are, Fiddler on the Roof. There are countless examples of musicals that get you laughing and weeping and cheering all at the same time, and it's a very cathartic, human experience. Dissimilar to a film, I've done minimal film acting in my life, but it's because it's on celluloid and you're not necessarily there when the audience is viewing you. You're removed from the process. But there's a delicious synergy between live audience and live actor that is different every single time you do it.
Right.
You'll run a show for 4 months, 6 days a week, and you will never do it the same way twice. You can't.
There's one of the owners, I believe, of the Hippo. He does the musical. He plays the keyboard while he runs a black and white silent film.
Yeah, great.
What a great idea! Yeah. And he can feed off the audience's senses, as they're watching the movie, and somebody falls, dun 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 dun. It's.
Well, we all have a soundtrack of our life, right?
Right.
You sort of, when you're happy, there's happy music in the background, whether it's on the radio or not. When it's sad, there's some mournful violin playing on a hilltop. I frequently, look at my life as sort of, no one would make this movie because it's too boring, but there's some outrageous twists and turns in everybody's life. That,
Sure.
The axiom about musical theater is that a person breaks into song when the emotions are so powerful that mere words, mere spoken word is not enough. Now I must sing because I'm so happy, so angry, so confused, so in love.
Effervescing.
Yes, it has to have music behind it and notes. I can't just speak anymore. But yeah, we all have a soundtrack of our life.
Right.
Somewhere.
So what's going on up north? You're developing something up there?
Yeah, Gene's Playhouse was founded not this summer, but next year will be the 30th anniversary season of what began as the North Country Center for the Arts up in Lincoln, New Hampshire. First began as under a tent doing kids theater and music concerts for the most part, and then developed into a company that did Broadway quality musical and Shakespeare and straight plays in the paper mill down by the Pemigewasset River. And it was the Paper Mill Theater Company. Worked in the old mill for a long, long time. The old mill was an old mill and eventually needed to be put to bed. So the company moved for a couple of summers up to the Loon Mountain, the Governor Adams Lodge up at Loon, while they were building a brand new facility, which is where we are now.
Mm-hmm.
Gene's Playhouse is named after Jean Hallager, who was one of our most ardent benefactors and supporters while she was alive. Her husband, Bill, has since passed away as well, and Man of La Mancha is actually going to be done this summer as a memorial to him, because he was our knight who tilted at windmills, trying to keep this theater alive in its darkest days. But we've been in the new building for 3 years now. It still has that new car smell. I've only been there since a year ago, October, so about a year and a half now. And as the producing artistic director, I'm in charge of picking the material we choose to put on, hiring the people that will put on those shows, trying to be the energy captain of the organization, keep the positive buzz going.
Is that a 501c3 or something?
Yeah, we're a nonprofit. We're a professional theater, but we're not affiliated with any unions. I used to be an equity actor for many years myself. Actors Equity Association is the union of professional stage actors. And I actually suspended my membership recently in order to help my own theater, because I wouldn't be allowed to work at Gene's Playhouse.
Now,
right. Yeah. I wouldn't be allowed to work there under an equity contract, but I can work wherever I want now that I'm non-equity. I'm still a member of SAG, the Screen Actors Guild, but we don't do movies up there. So in the summertime, for a long time, Gene's had done the Broadway caliber musical season. We've pushed that now into mid-October, trying to take advantage of the Leaf Peepers and the bus tours that come up through the Notch and across the Kank. So our summer season actually goes from the end of June to the middle of October. And then in the winter season, we don't produce anything internally other than a couple of community theater adult pieces and a couple of kids community theater pieces. And we bring in stand-up comics and concerts and magicians and jazz bands and different kinds of acts just to keep the thing going.
Sure.
It's hard to get the skier off the mountain. I'm not a skier myself. I was a hockey player as a kid. And
we just don't get it.
Yeah, so I don't know. But somebody who's been skiing all day, they get off 4:30, 5 o'clock, they go to their condo, they have a glass of wine, they're not going out again. They're in for the night. At least so far, that's been our experience. But in the summertime, the biker, the hiker, the swimmer, the climber.
Yeah, well, we go up there, we jump in the Kank, if you will, and then we do the rope climbing or whatever. And what else can we do?
And you're right, it's part of what are we going to do after dinner? Oh, there's a theater over there. So we do not family friendly necessarily, but friendly, funny, comedy, musical. We're not doing any Ibsen or O'Neill or Tennessee Williams or Chekhov.
Yeah, that's too deep, right?
Yeah, nothing, no heavy lifting required. Just the best example, I guess, would be last summer we did Spam-A-Lot, the musical version of The Holy Grail, and no heavy lifting required at all. Literally, just come and laugh. And it was our biggest success of the summer. And that's kind of what we're trying to move forward with, is sort of big, energetic, fun dance, musical, farce. The season this summer, we open with Lend Me a Tenor, which is a hilarious door-slamming, naughty farce of mistaken identity and girls in their underwear and boys falling behind couches. And hilarious. Actually, Lend Me a Tenor originally was produced at the American Stage Festival. Weird how things go full circle in your career. Written by Ken Ludwig.
That's relatively new, right?
Yes.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's what,
Reasonably.
20 years old?
Maybe mid to late 80s it was written. Very, very, very funny. Again, nothing required, but sit down, enjoy yourself. You're
Right.
gonna laugh a lot tonight. We're doing Pippin, not the new version of Pippin that's on Broadway now with all the bells and whistles and the silk climbing and the juggling and sword swallowing. We don't have the liability for that. But the old school Ben Vereen, Bob Fosse, cool choreography. Again, early 80s, I think, is when Pippin came out. And then La Mancha is our hauling out the chestnut. That's what they call the old musicals. But I'm extremely fond of Man of La Mancha.
Do you sing?
I do.
Yeah.
I do. I'm going to be playing Don
You're gonna have
Quixote,
to.
so I better.
Yeah. Dumb question, actually, but yeah.
Yeah,
you're
no,
gonna be done.
I've been known to bellow a tune or two. And then in the fall, we'll be doing Dames at Sea, which is a tap dance musical, sort of a reduced version of 42nd Street. It's where Bernadette Peters got her start on Broadway.
Oh, really?
It was her first starring role. Very friendly for the senior citizen Leaf Peeper crowd that'll be up there in September and October. And then we're closing the season. What are we closing the season with? I can't even remember now. I'll think of it in a minute. Again, another, same time next year, duh. Alan Alda, Ellen Burstyn were in the film, two-person romantic comedy about a couple that meets in a California hotel once a year, every year for 25 years, even though they're faithfully married to other people and have, I think, 6 children between them. And it's a good example of what you were talking about before. It takes you through 25 years of American history because the things they talk about in 54 are very different from the things they talk about in 79. And classically, it's done between every scene. There's a sort of a slideshow documentary piece of what's going on in America at that time.
Well, that's creative.
Yeah.
That's very
to
creative.
take you through, here's where we are now, and here's the world they're now living in. Because just to, you can think about it, sort of very Forrest Gump-ish, from 59 to 74, outrageous changes in this country. So it's an educational thing. Very nostalgia. I'm sorry I didn't remember it at first. That's not very good.
Especially for something so nostalgic.
But again, Leaf Peeper friendly. Old folks will love it.
Sure.
And at a time when it was written at a time when adultery was not necessarily, the butt of your standard comic waka waka joke. This was, wait a minute, there what? In fact, there was some early hubbub about the show. Is nobody's gonna buy this. No one's gonna appreciate this because they're committing sin. We can't laugh, in an environment like that. But it's so gently treated. And
Yeah, and I think it's healthy for people to see stuff like that, in that how things have changed,
Yeah.
so that for the newer generation, they can help, basically understand the perspective, if they ever cared to,
Right.
what the older generation was coming from.
The point is that when you're talking about kids going back and seeing some of these old things, and it's like us going back and seeing old movies that our parents, or old plays that our parents, or reading books, or listening to music. I remember the time when I said to my own kids, that music is crap that you're listening to. And I went, oh no, I've turned into my father.
Exactly. Exactly. But it's funny because if we look at history in a vacuum and interpret it from today's standards, you'll never understand it.
No.
You'll just be like, what? I don't get it.
That's why we tell the stories,
Yeah.
because there's a story about a love story in 45 was, in its core, the same as a love story in 65, the same as a love story in 85. That doesn't change man's need to be
Loved.
loved and cared for and respected and honored, and all those old movies about honor. The whole spaghetti western thing.
Yeah.
It's about men beating their chests and
There's still that
Good
sense of
guys and
honor
bad
today.
guys.
It's
Yeah,
just
sure
how
there
they
is.
go about doing
Sure
it,
there
you know,
is.
and it's incredible. So is there a website that people can?
Yeah, it's www.genesplayhouse.com. You can get information up there. There's the list of everything that we're doing. It's, as I said, it's a year-round theater company, and so there really ought to be something for everyone up there. We have a kids theater company called Impact, Imagination and Music, Professional Artistry, and Children's Theater. I came up with that myself. That tours around the state, bringing sort of fractured fairy tales, 45-minute original musical versions of classic tales, very similar to Shelley Duvall's fairy tale theater stuff that was out in the late 80s, early 90s. So we've got kids programming, we've got adults programming, we run a camp.
And people, if they want to get involved with these things, they can
Oh yeah, they can contact us through the website,
Right.
and there are phone numbers there for both the box office to buy tickets and the business office to get in touch with me or anybody else.
Good place for interns to.
It's theater is an insane way to make a living, and I'd be lying if I didn't say we were short-staffed, like every theater in the country probably believes they are. We always need help. Volunteer help on any level, of any kind, is usually welcome. But yeah, and we could even investigate. We've got a kid up there right now from Plymouth State who's doing an internship, and he's working with us as a technician, a lighting and sound technician,
Right.
getting college credit for it.
You need good sound people. Yeah.
Yeah.
right?
What? What is he saying?
It's too loud.
Yeah, I can't
What's
hear
that
him.
buzz?
I can't hear him.
Yeah.
The other piece of our puzzle up there, which is kind of fascinating, is we take out a national tour of Christmas Carol every year. We fell into a situation last summer where we inherited a tour from another theater company and drove around the countryside in two 15-passenger vans and a 26-foot box truck and did shows from Galveston, Texas to Delray Beach, Florida, and then came back home again. And
Hey, you just discovered yourself, right?
I
found myself, Mom.
and shouldn't even be here. I don't have time for this. But yeah, so it's a busy place to be, and very active. So
Well, thanks for coming on the show and sharing this, and we wish you great success.
Thank
and
you. I
hopefully,
appreciate having
this
me.
show, if you want to go up north this summer or during the fall, check out the theater. It's something else to do. I know when we go to the Kangamangas, we do the tour, we do the rope climbing, but we always look for, hey, what's on the agenda? Check it out. Theater's a fun thing.
come see a show.
Yeah. So until next week, thanks for watching Gate City Chronicles. Thank you for watching Gate City Chronicles, and we want to thank our sponsor, Avard Cleaning. They've been a sponsor for quite a few years now, and we appreciate them being a sponsor. And if you want to be a guest on our show, contact accessnashua@gmail.com. We'd love to hear your story. Until next week, thanks for watching.
The preceding program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.